The storm outside beat against the windows of the Anderson mansion, but it wasn't the thunder that made the new nanny, Grace Miller, pause at the doorway. It was the sight of the small girl curled on the bed, breathing shallow, trembling, and surrounded by untouched toys. Something was wrong here, very wrong, and deep inside, Grace felt this job would change her life forever. Grace had taken the position out of desperation. Her mother needed surgery, and the pay offered by Ethan Anderson, one of the country's most respected millionaires, was more than any other family had ever offered. But no amount of money could prepare her for the heartbreaking reality she walked into. His 9-year-old daughter, Lily, was always sick, mysteriously sick. Fever without flu, cough without infection, nightmares without reason. Doctors had given up. Therapists shrugged. And Ethan, buried in his work and drowning in guilt, seemed helpless. On her first morning, Grace noticed Lily barely ate anything. Her eyes were dull, and she flinched at sudden sounds as if she expected danger. Grace sat beside her, gently brushing tangled hair behind the girl's ear. "Lily," she whispered, "can you tell me what hurts?" The child only shook her head. "It's everything, it just hurts." Grace's heart ached. She had worked with children for years. She knew when an illness came from the body and when it came from fear. As the days passed, Lily grew attached to Grace. She smiled more, tried eating again, even asked for bedtime stories. But every night, just as the lights dimmed, she would tremble again, clutching the blankets until her knuckles went white. "Please," Lily begged one night, "don't turn off the lights. They come when it's dark." "Who's sweetheart?" Grace asked softly. Lily didn't answer. She just cried herself to sleep. Grace reported everything to Ethan. He listened, exhausted and lost, rubbing his temples. "I've hired the best doctors," he murmured. "Specialists from 3 countries. No one can explain why she's like this." "What about her mother?" Grace asked gently. "She died when Lily was 4. Ethan's voice cracked. "Lily barely talks about it, but she wakes up screaming her name." Days turned into weeks. Small improvements were followed by sudden collapses. One afternoon, while Grace helped Lily with schoolwork, the girl suddenly gasped, coughed violently, and fell from her chair. Grace caught her, holding her close as her tiny body shook. "Help me, please," Lily whispered. Grace felt a fire light inside her. She refused to believe this was just illness. Something was scaring Lily, something inside that mansion. And everything changed the night Grace decided to stay in Lily's room after she fell asleep. The clock ticked past midnight. The house was silent, and then Lily began whimpering, tossing helplessly. Grace leaned forward to comfort her, but froze when she heard something else. A soft scraping from under the bed. Grace's breath caught. She slowly got down on the floor, heart pounding. And when she lifted the blanket, what she saw made her eyes widen in horror. It wasn't a monster. It was a small black box, hidden between the bed frame and the floor. A blinking red light glowed at its corner. A recording device. Grace's trembling fingers pulled it out. She pressed play, and Lily's room filled with whispers, a man's voice, cold, sharp. "You're weak, you're worthless. You're the reason she died. You don't deserve to live." Grace felt sick. Someone had been tormenting Lily, repeatedly, secretly, every night. She raced to Ethan's study. "Listen to this," she demanded, tears streaming down her face. The more the recording played, the more Ethan's expression darkened. His fists clenched. "That voice," he whispered. "I know that voice." It belonged to Mark Bennett, Ethan's late wife's brother, a man who had despised Ethan, believing he had taken his sister away from their family. After her death, Mark blamed Ethan, claiming he ruined everything. Ethan had cut ties with him years ago, believing the man unstable, but he never imagined Mark would sneak into his home, plant devices, and poison the mind of his little girl. Ethan called security immediately. Police arrived. Mark was found hiding in the guest house on the far end of the property. His obsession and grief had twisted him into something dangerous, and he had taken it out on Lily, whispering hate through the device while she slept, until her mind broke. The moment he was arrested, Lily began to change. She slept peacefully for the first time in months. Her fever stopped. The coughing faded. Her appetite returned. She even laughed, a sound Ethan hadn't heard since his wife died. One afternoon, Lily hugged Grace tightly and whispered, "You saved me." Ethan watched from the doorway, eyes filled with gratitude he couldn't express. Later that night, he found Grace in the kitchen, preparing Lily's bedtime tea. "I don't have the words to thank you," he said softly. "If you hadn't looked under that bed, I might have lost her." Grace smiled gently. She just needed someone to listen. But Ethan shook his head. She needed someone who cared, truly cared. He hesitated, his voice fragile. "Stay with us, Grace, not just as Lily's nanny, but as part of this family." Grace felt tears well in her eyes. She had come here for money, but she had found something far more valuable, a purpose, a bond, and a home she didn't know she'd been missing. Lily recovered fully within months. She went back to school, joined dance classes, and filled the mansion with life again. Grace became more than a caregiver. She became Lily's safe place, her healer, and eventually her mother figure. And Ethan, once a grieving widower, learned to hope again. The Anderson mansion, once cold and quiet, became a place of laughter, warmth, and healing. Because one woman dared to look where others never thought.